Hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, September 2nd, 2021. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello and welcome to the podcast this week. I'm Norm, joined by two of my closest IRL and internet friends. It's Jeremy Williams.
Hi, Norman.
Hi, Jeremy. And Kishore Hari.
Hi, everyone. I'm not taking any offense of the order of the introduction, like you're ranking your friends.
No. Good to see you both. How has past week been for both of you? What's been going on?
Just busy trying to survive my way to Labor Day weekend.
Oh my gosh.
And I feel like there's so many crises happening out in the world that I'm just like keeping my head down and just trying to make it to 5 p.m. every day. That's my goal.
You're talking about my cat. No, she's all better now. All the urinary issues have been resolved. We went to the vet. They gave us some antibiotics. We stuffed a syringe down her throat for twice a day, 5 days in a row, and now she's all better. So thanks for caring, but it's all good. It's all good. No more tragedies anywhere.
Stuffed a syringe down her throat.
Yeah,
that sounds unpleasant.
Hey,
for everyone involved.
If Ripley ever gets sick, this is what you got to go through. This is not fun for the cat or you.
Oh,
but
yeah.
For the best.
Well, if you need anyone to come over and just randomly pee on things in your house, just let me know.
I got two babies. I got two kids. They can do it. I just got to, take off that diaper and let them roam free.
Last time your kid was over here, he ripped apart my Lego set, and I won't have it. You were there. He took something off my space station.
He didn't rip it apart, but he did take apart the space station. So the story behind this is, Jeremy, you were very generous in that you let me bring my kid over, a 2.5-year-old, because I needed to use your laser cutter. This is when my Glowforge was down, and I was cutting 1/4-inch acrylic. And because Jeremy, you don't have the Glowforge Pro, the power settings, the time estimates on what it took for your laser cutter to cut the acrylic was like 25-30% longer. And so I spent much longer than I originally anticipated, which I apologize for. I'm still very thankful that you let me cut that acrylic.
But if I only had the Pro, maybe you would have been out of here before your child had ripped apart my space station.
Exactly. Like, the short attention span of a 2.5-year-old. Despite the wide breadth of awesome and cool things that you have at home, Jeremy, from pinball machines to arcades to the PlayStation to Lego to look at, right, and to Disney Plus and movies to play, the attention span means that a child, and you both have children. The child can only be sustained for so long before running out of the new shiny things. And so it was the first half hour was delightful. He was you got a little step stool. He was pressing all the buttons on the pinball machine on the arcade cabinet. I got video of it. It was so much joy. Happier than I've ever seen him at home, because we don't let him touch that stuff at home. And then
I wonder why.
And then you saw he also had a balloon too. I think, was that one of your kids' balloons that he took?
Quite possibly.
Yeah, I think you guys had like a balloon somewhere, and he grabbed that, and that was another like 5 minutes of his time that occupied him. All right, and we're going to talk about things that occupy kids' time later on the show. It's a theme this week. But then once we got to like that 30 to 40 minute mark, and I was like checking in on these laser cuts, and they're like, still another 15-20 minutes to go. He was losing his patience, and he was running out of things, and then he started wanting to touch things, like things that he shouldn't be touching.
Things that at home he's not allowed to touch.
Oh, because we elevate them, because we don't need to childproof the
out
same
of reach,
way, right? And
that's so right. Not anymore.
Yeah,
I'm
so
sending him the YouTube video of you and Will like crashing the Star Destroyer into the Death Star.
No. I do not yet have a plan in place for what happens when my children are old enough to browse YouTube and the appropriate media blackouts certainly, this podcast, all 614 episodes so far of this podcast, is something to maybe bequeath to them much later on in life if they so want to see, their dad in a younger and more naive state in life. But yeah, I'm sorry. He took a piece off of your Lego ISS. It might have been the Canada arm. It might have been. I'm not sure what it was.
Neither am I, and that's why it's still unattached. So I hope that it's okay. The people inside, I hope they don't need it to survive.
Yeah.
By the way, on the subject of locking down your internet for the betterment of your children, that's a tricky feat, and if you can pull it off, I admire you. It is something that I have found is a temporary thing, because every time I've done it, it's just an incentive for my kids to learn how to get around it. Which has its own. That's fine too. Like, that's good. That's like, give them a challenge, and they will rise to it, and they will have earned technical knowledge that they wouldn't have had otherwise. But man, my 14-year-old long ago learned how to bypass the DNS filtering I had in place.
What?
And then once I did a much bigger DNS sort of solution that captured all outbound DNS requests, he discovered how to set up his own VPN, and he subscribes to a VPN somewhere in who knows what country. And it's just there's no stopping it. And if you want to shut down the internet, if they have a phone, what good is that? So it's a tricky situation.
Every day I like your kid more and more. But this is impressive. I will say my internet went out this weekend for almost a full day, and as soon as it happened, my son came over to my wife because he was instantaneously bored and was like, "What can we do?" And they started doing a puzzle, and now my wife is like, "What if we just shut off the internet for a day on the weekend?" And I said, "That's an idea." And I turned around and left, and I hope she forgets about it.
You need a big switch, you make a big prop handle, right? Like a big valve, right in the center of the living room. You turn it a certain way and lock it, and then the internet gets shut off. And make it very a tangible, dramatic thing, and teach them, don't anger the parents, because I will rotate the big valve in the middle of the room and literally stop the digital pipes from flowing.
Ironically, the person who asked me to shut off the internet yesterday was my 14-year-old son, and it's because, perfectly in character, he had been banned from a video game for cheating a month ago, and he needed to refresh our IP address. And so I shut it down, and it booted it back up, and it didn't change. And so he Googled, he found out, no, our internet provider needs us to shut it down for 20 minutes. And so I did, and we got it. We refreshed the IP. We got a whole new IP address. And so, yeah. It's just one thing after another, man.
Wow. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
That is, and I want to believe that your kid is exceptional in his industriousness and in ingenuity and in circumventing the protocols that you've laid in place. But if any of my kids come close to that, and who knows what life will be like 12 years down the line, and what things I'll have to swat away from them in the digital space, that is not something to look forward to.
Oh, it's not. It's not.
All this is tied to, and maybe we'll skip to this right now. The big story, at least that resonated with me this week, is the news that overseas in China, this is something that's been happening for a long time. There are official government restrictions on the amount of time that children can spend playing video games. And the companies that make the video games, who own the video game companies, have to obey and follow the regulations in terms of when those services can be activated and how much gets tracked. But that even the limited time that they had previously set has now been further reduced with a new limit that is 3 hours per week. I can't fathom that. So platforms like Tencent can only offer, it's a maximum, so it can only offer gaming to kids between the hours of 8 and 9 p.m. on Friday, weekends, and public holidays. And in addition to that, that's capped at 3 hours per week.
Yeah, so it's not just 3 hours whenever you choose to use it.
Correct.
It's
Yes.
1 hour a day during a specific period of time.
It's 1 hour from that Friday, 8 to 9 p.m., and then weekends and holidays.
Right.
But in that window, in the 49-hour window plus holidays, 3 hours max, which is tracked with presumably software that has to be built into the computers and phones, and that's a reduction from capped at 1.5 hours per day that they set in 2019. And they're like tiered restrictions. Like apparently they're when games become too popular, there's a game over there called Honor of Kings that then too many people, according to the eyes of the government, felt were playing that game. Then they required Tencent, who makes that game, to specifically cut the availability of that game, the playtime, to just an hour on weeknights and 2 hours on the weekend. So it's not even like a blanket. It's a sliding scale, slippery slope, even you could call it, but also specifically targeting certain trends and fads, and very reactive and responsive to the trends in gaming culture over there. Now, of course, it's a different culture, different government, but what's interesting, I think, that came out of this story for me is trying to wrap my head around how I felt about it. I felt very conflicted, and looking at the social media responses, my anticipation, my expectation was that the response was that this is too much overreach, too much control. And I was actually, frankly, really surprised by how many people who I follow, who I saw, who are typically, very progressively minded, and maybe even, libertarian minded, who thought that, wow, this is maybe not such a bad thing because of their own experiences trying to regulate their own kids' playtime. And I haven't had a chance to talk to you guys about it. So what are your thoughts on this type of regulation over there, and how it may, like, what kind of impact that would have if something like that was tried here in the States?
So I'll start by saying that the reasoning behind the decision is opaque, like with many decisions from the Chinese government. But the article cited concerns about academics, even implying kids' attention span was being impacted, and then they think it's increasing nearsightedness. I just want to go on the record said there's no evidence that playing video games is linked to nearsightedness. So let's put that one off the table. Then this idea that it impacts academics, I think that's certainly true for some kids, but it's also not true for others. And the thing that I struggled with the most is this decision in the context of where we are as a moment. Right now, my son uses video games as a social outlet in a time when that is highly restricted because of the pandemic. And so I find that he balances his use, based on other priorities that we set with him. So it's okay. Like with almost anything that he does, he can go overboard. So we have to be really careful and thoughtful about it. And he's young, so we have to manage what the online interactions look like. But to me, this is draconian in so many ways, especially given this moment, because it's also runs counter to where technology and video games go. And frankly, in China, it runs counter to the culture that the adults that are playing video games, which is where a majority of Tencent's money comes from in terms of video games in China, is running. So it feels just sort of disconnected.
Yeah, what he said. I mean, Kishore, you speak so eloquently. I'm embarrassed to be on this show with you. That was exactly my point of view. Well said. My son, I can relate, just like Kishore said, uses the internet, I would say, mostly for social interaction these days, and that just happens to be in a video game.
Is it that, as an alternative, like if those video games are not available, like if they're locking down specific games, right, and then the culture and the kids are forced to find other means, either like what your kids is doing, Jeremy, to circumvent and build their hacking skills and their know-how to circumvent these protocols, which they certainly could figure out ways to do. It's been back and forth there. I don't know what the punishment is for doing that, if there is any, but like, is the solution to offer alternatives? Like, if you could you try, like, how do you get kids? I guess the question is, are the games fundamentally, if they're the medium in which these kids they're building their friendships and communities? And growing up, we did the same thing, right? Like, what is there? Is there anything to be afraid of as a parent? And where are the limits that you want to set for your own kids?
Right, but that's not the topic here, right? This is the government setting limits for our kids, and we don't want that. I think it's easy to say we should all be making those decisions for ourselves, and every family is different. But for our family, it's like all the kids would like to do is be on screens all day long, and that's pretty much the refrain we hear from the parents in our school. So it's it's always going to be a struggle. Any limitation you put is going to be a fight, and so you just gotta block out time on the calendar and make sure that kids understand that during these hours, we're not on screens, and you don't necessarily need to shut down the internet. Just get them off the screens.
Yeah, I will say gaming addiction is a real thing. It's a real problem for a number of kids. I think that, this policy is, ridiculous, would never work in the US, would never work in Western nations for so many reasons, because it's such a broad approach to a more targeted problem. But I do think is interesting is putting more responsibility on video game developers to ensure proper systems, to ensure a good experience for kids while playing video games, which we're still struggling with. And two, like pushing back on the development of certain games, especially mobile games that are designed to essentially play up to the addiction and like, frankly, extort money from certain whales. And so I think there is an area that we could see some push on. This policy doesn't seem to address any of that, but I think those are interesting areas to explore. That would be a reasonable thing to think about in the context of gaming addiction.
Yeah, it seems like there's a fundamental disconnect between the people who are implementing these regulations and their understanding of modern gaming and this kind of blanket assumption of the predatory, types of games. And there's definitely attributes in games that feel predatory because of free to play and because of the money making schemes. And they're definitely not, or maybe have no interest of being in touch with the theorists who study, this stuff for better recommendations for how games can be developed. And I think about their logic behind this, or their rationale behind this, is that they want to curb addiction, right? They think that they call this a spiritual addiction in their culture, and the way I've always understood it is, some of the best ways to fight addiction is through building stronger connection. The people who are addicted maybe lack the connection they feel with other people, but for games, that comes hand in hand. Like, the part of the appeal of the games, and I think about all the multiplayer games I played growing up and in school, is because of the connection you felt, and that's certainly a net plus. You can't have your Twitch communities and your IRC communities and your Discord communities about games if you don't also have the fun that you're having with those people as well.
I mean, there's shared experiences otherwise. Like, we all went to go see a movie in our own separate theaters, and we come back and we talk about it, or we saw the most recent episode of Mandalorian or whatever. And kids can certainly watch as much TV as they want to, and they can probably play, I imagine, certainly they can play offline games as much as they want to. So, I mean, there'll still be shared experiences, but just not the same thing. It's entirely possible that this will have some positive benefits. I mean, if kids are forced offline, then they will play a type, more likely to play a type of game that is not like what Kishore is describing, that isn't microtransaction based, trying to extort kids to buy, in-app purchases. Maybe it'll be a single player game that is designed to give you a good time for the money you spent for the game, and it's a one-time transaction. I'm just saying, devil's advocate. There might be some good benefits to it. I can see where some logic might be seated here, but I completely disagree with the policy.
Like with anything, there's always some positives that emerge from something, but this is so draconian, it's ridiculous. You know what it reminded me of in the initial reactions? You remember growing up and when they first put warning labels on CDs because that kind of music, especially rap music, was going to deteriorate our brains. And it was just so reminiscent of these broad brush policies that seem disconnected from the culture of those that are actually embedded in it.
And what's also interesting is that just a week ago, South Korea lifted their 10-year, what they called the Cinderella law that prevented kids from playing games between the hours of 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. And they had that policy for PC and console games for a decade in place. They probably had the data in the research to see if there were any benefits of that. And they made the decision. And they say out of the respect of the rights of parents and kids, to let the parents decide and to actually abolish that law and then allow parents to arrange guidelines for playtimes and not be a straight up blanket curfew. So, for a country that did have this type of ban or a similar ban to go back on it, I think it's a positive, and that tells you that they didn't necessarily see the benefits. And maybe it was people circumventing it, but maybe it was like, I don't think it was them politicians just suddenly deciding, oh, we were wrong, but they probably had the data to back it up or communication with parents.
Just as an aside, the times that they're allowed to play video games are really strange to me, because in no world would I ever say, oh, you can play video games between 8 and 9 p.m. on the weekends. Like in my world, like it would be sometime in the afternoon or maybe in the morning. But the closer you play video games to bed, the more stimulated you are, the harder of a time you're going to have falling asleep. I mean, to me, like the evening is the last time you should be playing video games. It's a strange thing.
I also think it's hilarious that they've put all internet traffic from gaming into this 1 hour window where you'll not be able to do anything else on the internet except play video games, because it'll be choked out by the amount of traffic that'll be coming through.
Yeah, again, big cultural differences. I don't know what it's a population density is different in a lot of those towns, right? Internet connectivity different. The types of games available. But I'm unfamiliar with so much of this stuff. But it does. The policy will be in place, and I guess we'll just have to. Hopefully, there'll be reporting out of China from international journalists letting us know what the feedback is, repercussions are, and if there is any good to come out of this. Very interesting and thought-provoking for parents, which all three of us are. But going back to this past weekend was Silicon, the previously Silicon Valley Comic-Con, now called Silicon, came back after a year off. I think it was virtual last year, and was back at the San Jose Convention Center. And the Tested team were down there in support of Adam, who's the creative director of the show. And it was fun, to see a lot of familiar faces, people we haven't seen for almost 2 years. So Bill Duran was down there, SKS Props, Beverly Downen of Downen Creative was down there, some cosplayers, Riddle, Chris Nanio, friends of the site were there, and it was just really fun to hang out and chat with them in person. I was there on Saturday. The convention did have strict mask requirement, even if you were in costume. It had a limited capacity, so only a few thousand people were able to attend, and the space felt very chill. It was like there were a good number of people there. A lot of people I saw in costume, but it wasn't the standard San Diego or even past years of Silicon Valley Comic-Con of shoulder to shoulder, packed floor, packed hallways.
From a business standpoint, how do you justify a show right now during Delta variant? I mean, I assume that it was booked ages ago, but certainly there was enough time to see that the pandemic was around, if not having a relapse. I mean, How did that happen? How was this show still even on the calendar?
I think, they felt comfortable with vaccinations, the number of vaccinations in the area, and masking, and the air conditioning, and the amount of space that they had open. So a lot of open space, and yeah, I mean there are conventions all this past month, right, at Orlando, DC. There are ones going on. Rose City's coming up next weekend in Portland, and so it's going to be from organizer to organizer and in region to region in terms of the comfort of the attendees. I certainly talked to a lot of people who in past years would have gone, but decided to stay home, and that's a smart choice for them and their families. I didn't bring my family there, and but when I was there, it was nice to see that everyone was masked and really respectful of each other's spaces and personal spaces. And I didn't feel, it, like there was, personal danger to me, but definitely, went home and took a shower and put the neti pot on to to flush my system.
Well, I'm just speaking from a business standpoint. I mean, I'm sure everyone felt comfortable, and it's great for health reasons that they limited capacity. But from my perspective, like I just imagine that these events are only profitable if you can get a lot of people to show up, and so I just wonder, who fronted the bill for this and how that worked out for them.
I also think at some level, like if you stop putting the events on, they lose like a certain momentum.
Yeah.
And then even when everything's back, you sort of lose the ability to keep them going. So it killed me not to be there. I've been watching all the cosplay from afar. I want to shout out the Joseph Grasso and Odin Makes Gunpla, the Gundam cosplay.
Yeah.
That was so good. Odin Abbott, really great maker. You should check out his YouTube channel if you don't already. That does essentially like budget quick builds of different props. I last met Odin at Dragon Con. I think it was 2 years ago now. Really great maker. He's based out in Sacramento. Shelley Carver, who we've seen a bunch of times before at Silicon Valley Comic Con and other places. She did Throg too, which is the Thor frog, and then King Shark from the Harley Quinn animated series that I thought was really wonderful. There's one other one I wanted to shout out. There was a bunch of like Loki and MCU based cosplays. There was like a TVA group that had Alligator Loki, and it was just a really well designed costume. There was Agatha Harkness that I saw. Just really kind of inspiring stuff to get back into doing cosplay right now.
It blows my mind. I not having been to a convention in so long, like the muscle memory of it kicked back in, and I didn't know what to expect in terms of number of attendees or number of people who would be willing to dress up. But even just parking the car and walking to the convention, I was seeing people on the street in different stages of cosplay, from just helmets to full blown stuff to face paint and everything, and it just reminded me it was a tangible example of like how eager people are to go to conventions and to celebrate their fandoms and to show off the builds that they've been making over this past year, and the stuff that's recent, right? You talk about the Throg that was an appearance in the Loki show. I saw a couple of Loki and Sylvies. I saw some Starfleet officers with the Lower Decks era animated uniforms, and so because people have been enjoying pop culture by themselves or just sharing their experiences online and online communities, it was fun to see those finally at conventions, because we haven't seen that calm response from media to fandom in person. And there's like a wonderful Mysterio. There's some really cool effects one, the Gunpla one, that Gundam from Odin, using HD foam, but the painting. I think SKS Props also had I forget which prop it was, but they had like different paint ups, like different ways to paint. And one of them was just like the cell shaded look of armor was just so cool, and it was fun to chat with each of them. Yeah.
I forgot to shout out my favorite one, which is from Yeti GT, which is the Pixar lamp.
Yeah.
The Luxo Jr. That was fantastic. And that's my style of cosplay, which is like, stupid and ridiculous and like over the top and like, you know, not about craft. And I just really
that's a
enjoyed
nice costume. What are you talking about? Don't
No,
talk-
it's
not
totally a
about
nice
craft.
costume. No, it's totally like a nice costume. But like, honestly, he's wearing like a white shirt and white pants. And like, you know, it's not as intricate as some of the other ones we just shouted out beforehand.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious, right? And it's so recognizable and it's so inventive and creative to dress up as a lamp that everyone recognizes and has a fondness for.
And he's
so,
wearing a white mask. And the one thing I want to point out is how everybody incorporated a mask into their costume in interesting ways. Like you almost don't even think that it's COVID. Like that's just a part of the costume, you know. And I really appreciate that aspect of it.
That costume is very performance driven and interaction driven. So it's ones that people like you don't just recognize, but there's a whole act to it that fun for other attendees.
Yeah, Dragon Con is this weekend, so I'm sure we'll be seeing more cosplays come across your feed. Kills me that I'm not there. They're going like a step farther than some other cons and requiring proof of vaccination or results from a negative test to even attend. And they like reduce capacity. So I hope it goes well. Rose City always has some great cosplay as well. I'm just excited, even though I understand not everyone is in a place where they feel comfortable going. I'm excited that this bit of normalcy is coming back. And just the inspiration from seeing all these cosplays again.
Yeah. It makes me definitely excited for next year. And even later this year when, you know, like to see the pictures out of Dragon Con, to see what comes out of New York and all that stuff. In the pop culture world, a couple more things. We published our first behind the scenes video when we visited the set of Ghostbusters Afterlife. And this is Adam getting to actually drive the Ecto-1. They made several Ecto-1 drivable stunt vehicles that are also hero vehicles. If you see in the trailer, it's heavily driven, and we got to look under the hood and actually see it come out of the big car trailer. It just came out of the shop, and Adam got to drive it around the studio lot, which is pretty amazing. So if you're a fan of the original Ghostbusters and want to see how they've rebuilt and made the Ecto-1, go check that out on the channel. Also, DC announced the DC Fandome. This is their big online fan convention, their equivalent of what it would have been, you know, multiple Comic-Con panels, but they just run their own thing with a bunch of videos. They've done it for the past couple of years, but they announced that October 16th is this the next streaming event. And what's going to happen is you're going to see the next trailer for the Matt Reeves Batman movie, which it sounds like they've been doing some test screenings. So if you really want to know what's going on, you can go on Twitter and search.
Can I tell you one thing about them?
Yep.
It's not much of a spoiler. It's not a spoiler at all. He said it's like from those early test screenings, they say it reads like a horror movie, which I was like, wow, if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got a little bit of the darker vibe from that first trailer, especially the villain. That, you know, it was very David Fincher-esque, and you know, I think they're not afraid to go dark. And this is going to be completely separate from the Justice League Snyderverse type stuff. So, a new trailer for the Batman. There's gonna be. It's funny how they describe this. A new trailer for Batman. First look at Black Adam. A sneak peek at the Flash, and behind the scenes looks at Aquaman and Shazam 2. What is the difference between
somebody's working the thesaurus overtime?
Yeah. Tell me the difference between a trailer, new content, first look, sneak peek, and behind the scenes looks.
I mean, probably what it is a trailer. One of them is going to be stills. One of them is going to be behind the scenes like imagery,
the featurette, maybe like,
and then
Marvel.
The Black Adam one is probably going to be The Rock coming out in costume.
A first look, like uncut in a trailer, you know, not something they wouldn't have put in front of a movie, but something spliced specifically for this event. Yeah, it's funny because I read that and actually I can visualize exactly what these are going to be. Going to past conventions and how they've rolled out like first footage and first images. Yeah, you can get a sense of the hierarchy of the reveals. But there's a lot of stuff coming, right? Black Adam and Shazam are going to be that shared universe. Shazam 2, I'm very excited about, and then Aquaman, which made $1 billion. They're doing a big sequel of that. The Flash is probably the one that core DC fans will be really excited by, because that's the one that, Jeremy, you know this, Michael Keaton's coming back for.
Wait a minute. Aquaman made $1 billion?
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
Is that their most successful film?
No.
Well, let's Google this really quickly.
That's
DC...
a ton of money for. Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Okay,
it
here we
only
go.
made 335 domestically, but it made 800 million abroad. That's why.
Wow.
Yeah. The DC universe domestically, Wonder Woman was the most successful one with 400 million.
Uh-huh.
I don't have an international. Global. Yeah. You might be right. I think it might be it might be Aquaman at $1 billion global. Yeah, that's it. 1.1. Yeah.
Wow. I can't believe they screwed up Justice League so much that Aquaman overperformed it.
Well, I feel like I have to see Aquaman now. I had no idea.
You haven't seen Aquaman? You have a big TV and a big Dolby sound system, Dolby Vision. It is,
I have a shower and a mirror.
It is a pure popcorn movie. I think the way someone described it is they asked someone to make a movie that was the culmination of what, like, the dictionary definition of a blockbuster. Like, just throw everything into it, from your big epic battle scenes to crazy costumes, crazy fight scenes. It's a lot of fun. And Jason Momoa is super charismatic. I think he's great as a character. And it made 1.1 billion. I mean, Frozen made $1 billion. The first Frozen made $1 billion. Alice in Wonderland, the Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland, also made $1 billion. That was over 10 years ago.
Yeah, but when Frozen made $1 billion, like, they made the director, like, the creative director for the entire company. Like, I had no idea that Aquaman was that successful. That's impressive.
Yeah, and international gross. I mean, that's where it's at. It has international appeal. I think the Asian countries, they love their water movies. You look at some of the highest grossing films over in Hong Kong and China. A lot of them are like water theme, like the Avatar stuff. I mean, that's why Avatar 2, it's going to be $1 billion. That one's going to be underwater, right? That's what James Cameron knows. He knows the market.
That's hilarious.
There you go. You're connecting those dots. So DC Fandome, that's going to be October 16th. Much sooner than that, this weekend is the opening of Shang-Chi. And we talked about on the podcast what would be the first movie that we'd be watching in theaters. Jeremy, I know you're still holding out. It wasn't Black Widow for any of us. For me, it's going to be this weekend. I got tickets for a Thursday night late showing after the kids go to sleep. I got permission from the family to mask up and to watch Shang-Chi on opening night.
I'm excited for you.
Very excited for that. Yeah. We'll hopefully be able to talk about it. Maybe not next week, because it doesn't sound like you guys are going to watch it in theaters. Or Kishore, not opening weekend for you?
Not opening weekend for me, but soon thereafter. I have plans that I'll discuss afterwards.
So maybe I will do like a spoiler. I'll give my spoiler-free impressions next week, because it's gonna be a long tail. This is one of the big Marvel movies, one of the first big Disney movies that they're not doing on the Disney Premiere, Disney Plus Premiere Access. So definitely, I can't expect that, even though it might be successful Labor Day weekend, a lot of you out there probably won't have seen it by next week. So I'll give spoiler-free impressions. And the last couple of bits of quick things, Galactus fans will be very happy to know that the, 20-inch tall?
32, buddy.
32-inch tall Galactus figure from Hasbro has been successfully funded from their HasLab system. You guys know about this, right? This is their version of Kickstarter. They require a certain number of backers. They've done a few Star Wars ones. The Jabba's Barge, that was a playset for the small figures, 3.75 inch figures. That one was hugely successful. You can't even buy that on eBay right now without being like 3 or 4 times the cost. So anyone who backed that,
Unicron is the one that was, I think, the most impressive, just because of the scale, and it transformed. even though I didn't love the look of it, in person,
finish,
it was just impressive from a scale. This one garnered 32,000 backers, including me, and reached a bunch of stretch goals, including a Silver Surfer add-on, a Nova add-on, a Doctor Doom head for Galactus. It won't.
What?
Yes.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
It won't ship for an entire year though. But they showed like a time lapse build with some of the creators of an unfinished version. It looks a lot better than the Unicron one.
So
but it'll be interesting to see the finish in person.
Are these limited production?
They're only making as many as backed it during this run.
So you can't get one now. Forget
you can't get one now.
Yeah.
And I already feel the regret. Like I have that thing where, right, like as with every crowdfunding campaign, it's like $400. Oh, it's too much. And then the moment it ends, I'm like, wow, they unlocked a lot of perks. They're never going to make more. Instant regret.
I was just wondering, I have no idea who this is, but I imagine he's going to show up in a movie at some point, and at that point, prices are going to skyrocket.
Yeah.
There'll also just be more stuff. Like Thanos stuff used to be very expensive, and then all of a sudden he showed up in Marvel movies, and there's a billion things that you can purchase now.
Right.
Yeah. So HasLab, they did a Sentinel figure of the same size, the X-Men villain, the big robot. And that one also massively successful. The Razor Crest was a Mandalorian, the ship. And that one's a little controversial because remember, I backed that one. I think it's going to be fun to paint up. But like the week after that campaign ended was what happened to the ship in the show happened, if you haven't seen Mando season 2, which then a lot of fans were upset by because they backed this toy they're not going to get in a year, and by the time it comes out, the ship won't be the same. We'll say.
Yeah, fair. If you're really a big Galactus fan, I actually think the Sideshow one that's up for only 26 inches. That maquette is actually a better looking one, but it's like $900 or something.
You guys would be proud of me. I actually spent some time trying to find a nice model like this of Star-Lord's ship like a week ago because I really like that ship. I like the paint job on it and the shape. It's really interesting to me. And I wanted to buy a nice model of it, but they just don't make them. Nobody made one.
I know. The Milano from the first movie, right?
Is that what it's called? Yeah, I forget.
Yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah, Lego has one, but it's not the same. It has that really nice orange plus the metallic finish. Yeah, it's a gorgeous, and it's like it looks almost like a World War II bomber in that it's very like tilted in the front, the window for the passengers sit. So it's really like a cool like bird-like design to it.
Yeah,
the wing look. Great production design for that ship. Speaking of Mandalorian, Disney Plus dropped the second behind-the-scenes episode of The Gallery for season 2, and this one just focused on the making of the finale. So we're going to enter major spoiler territory here, because if you haven't seen Mando season 2, you skip ahead for a couple minutes, because this is about how they brought back the character and how they filmed in secret the character of Luke Skywalker coming back in the finale. And it goes back to the story of like when they had visited Mark Hamill at his home to pitch him on the idea because he had to be on board. And then of course, all the secrecy and the kind of covert ops filming that they had to do. They had half the production team filming the Boba Fett episode on location, and then a small crew on a soundstage. And then they talked about using the body double. They had to cast an actor, but not tell the actor who he was going to play. And then they filmed both Mark Hamill on set plus this body double. And then John Knoll talked about the multiple technologies that they all explored. So this has been, maybe a reactionary piece as a as a behind the scenes documentary, because the appearance of Luke Skywalker, while most fans love that he appeared, how he actually showed up has been up to some debate. Was this a fully CG character like Tarkin in Rogue One? Was this body double plus a face graft, or was it using like deepfake technology? And there are some people who, deepfake is a tech that you can use yourself and employ yourself. And people have posted YouTube videos of their own attempts at the Luke Skywalker deepfake. And it turns out they put one of their designers, one of their artists, in a room and had him ingest hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of Mark Hamill interviews that they had in Lucasfilm archives, plus stuff that was found filmed online, and ran their own deepfake simulations and did a full comparison between makeup and a digital makeup, de-aging, a deepfake, and a full CG character. And
wait, you know that Lucasfilm hired the person who did that?
Yes, they hired the one guy who's actually, the story is that he's actually a researcher, and even though he has a YouTube channel, like you see all these stories, Lucasfilm hires, deepfaker YouTuber, and the fact that he has a YouTube channel is bearing the lead in that he is actually a well-respected and renowned deepfake researcher, and it's not that Lucas Reactionary hired him because he did a better job, quote unquote, than they did. It's because they were already exploring these technologies in-house, as this behind-the-scenes show talked about, and they needed someone probably with more expertise to help them further this. And they talked about, Jon Favreau talked about the responsibilities of this technology and how it could be used for nefarious purposes. And then he talked about crypto at the end and NFTs, and and how, do you remember in the episode where Boba Fett gets his armor and he like pulls up that hologram and he goes like, my identity's been locked into the chain here forever. He was talking about his identity locked into an NFT, into the blockchain of the Star Wars universe. So they fully embrace blockchain ledger technology in Star Wars. It's canon. It's a really fascinating behind the scenes look. Really cool to see all that, the footage of Mark Hamill on set as well, and everyone just being fans again, and having that sense of awe and wonder when when R2 rolled onto set, right? That we had as we watched it, and the fact that they kept it a secret was pretty amazing too. So well worth watching. That's Disney's The Gallery on Disney Plus for The Mandalorian. Just a couple more things before we wrap up in the tech world. Microsoft has a Surface event happening later this month, September 22nd. Windows 11's on the horizon. I don't know if either of you have been following that. They did announce that Windows 11, you would be able to sideload install it if you didn't have the right approved motherboard chip, the TPM chip. You could actually still sideload it, download. You just wouldn't be able to use the Windows update, in your Windows 10 to update to 11. But they'll be showing more of Windows 11, and the assumption is another Surface laptop, plus Surface Duo 2, sticking with it, the foldable phone. Yeah. So, okay, we'll check it out when that goes on sale, I guess, when not enough people buy it, because the first one certainly didn't sell very well. And then a shout out. This will have been over by the time you're listening to this, but currently, as we're recording this, there are Twitch streamers who are going dark today. They're doing a day off Twitch, not streaming, to bring awareness to some of the issues that are on that platform that some users and creators are dealing with, in terms of abuse and brigading, and calling for Twitch to give them better tools to help them combat abuse on that platform. So
yeah, for those that aren't aware, there's been an issue across the platform of what's called hate raids, where a number of bots will brigade a channel and then flood the chat with racist and homophobic content. And it's challenging for so many reasons. It's really hard because it oftentimes hits creators that have smaller channels. They don't have many moderators, so they're just trying to manage this themselves. And basically, the community has banded together to come up with ways to do this. I think I've seen a number of lists and tips and tricks, including running an ad break as soon as the brigade happens, so you monetize the hate at least. But the problem is functionally that this is happening at all, and the kind of damage. And so I know there's a lot of creators on that platform that can't afford to take a day off because this is literally their income stream. But there's quite a broad section of streamers that are taking the day off to bring attention to it. And I think Twitch has acknowledged the problem, but the fix for this is taking some time.
Has the public or the Twitch community made proposed a solution? Because are they just trying to bring attention to this and say and really get Twitch's attention to address it publicly? Because I mean, it seems like a very difficult problem to solve, and not that they can't do it, but I wonder if Twitch is not doing enough, or if it's simply just too difficult a problem to solve quickly.
Yeah, there's a set of demands, I would call them, from the community to Twitch, including, some really targeted stuff. Like right now, you can make more than one Twitch account per email address, which allows for like bots to be rampant. Create protection schemes for hate raids in terms of creator controls. Actually hold some listening sessions with creators that have been consistently affected by these hate raids. And then create some accountability mechanisms around when these items could be implemented.
Yeah, and kind of related to that, in social media, like Twitter has had similar issues. Anytime you're broadcasting on any platform, one to many, but you don't have control over who responds to you, who adds you, especially when you check things like your mentions. Twitter is rolling out in beta what they call a safety mode, and it's an opt-in mode where if you have access to it, you go in your settings, you toggle it on for a certain amount of time, for like 7 days, and then over that duration, the next 7 days, for example, they will use their algorithm to identify abusive accounts, whether people who are using hateful, harmful language or doing things like brigading, like mass adding you, when you're not responding, and automatically um, temporarily block them, and then give you a report at the end of that duration, and also do some auto blocking. And so using their algorithms, and I guess that's why it's an opt in. So they're probably going to be aggressive in their blocking, um, and but I could see this being something that people would, if they trust the system, turn on indefinitely, because it is something that people who use these platforms shouldn't have to endure, and hopefully it discourages that type of behavior. And I guess we can wrap things up with a little bit of VR. Not much going on in the VR world, although I want to give a shout out that Space Pirate Trainer, one of the oldest VR games, is getting an update that they first teased way back at, what was it, OC5, I want to say?
A while ago.
Yeah. It's getting multiplayer, first of all. Space Pirate Trainer getting multiplayer, and also arena scale multiplayer in person, with what they call the DX update.
It's in person or remote.
Yes, exactly. They say best in person, but this was first teased. We saw video footage of, people playing in headset using, Oculus Quests, in a large room, an open space. You can imagine it like a gymnasium. Here it's 10 meter by 10 meters, so over 35 feet by 35 feet space. And while the space looks completely empty, what they see in their headset are walls and basically a maze, a laser tag like environment, and they're doing physical locomotion in that space with perfect synchronization of each other's space. So we're gonna hopefully get a chance to try it out if we can find the space. I don't know. I don't think it scales. Unfortunately, it's not one of those where it can dynamically. You can say I only have a 5 meter, 5 meter space. It's a locked in environment. But if it's all synced up, it reminds me of when Will and I went to Swiss Next that one time way back, right? Because sure, you hooked us up.
Yeah.
And they were the VR researchers who did like a VR escape room style environment where we had some, it wasn't redirected walking, but it gave us the illusion of like going through a maze, even though we were in open space. And, what we would not want to step into the lava or go through the walls. You create these natural cognitive boundaries for your own self as you see the space.
Do you happen to know if this requires Quest 2? Because I was surprised. I would be surprised if the original Quest supports a 10x10 area, but it may. Don't know.
I think it does. Yeah,
Okay.
It's for Quests, and the pricing will go up. This is going to be launched next week, so it's September 9th is when they're launching it. But I think it's just I think it will be for Quest 2, and because you can do other platforms as well. You don't have to do the in-person multiplayer. It's also going to be, I think, for other platforms. Yeah. Well, let me see.
So I wonder what kind of space we could find. At the very least, we could go out to a park on an overcast day. The internet would have us for lunch if they saw us playing out in the sun. But we'd be careful about our lenses and all. If it was in the late afternoon, perhaps even early evening, or a cloudy day, we'd probably be all right.
The camera lenses aren't really affected, right? If you're talking about damage to the screen, that's only if the internal lenses are facing the sun.
Oh, it doesn't hurt the outside lenses?
No, those cameras are totally fine. Tracking gets inhibited with IR when you have the sun, so you lose tracking fidelity. But I think an indoor, it's kind of like a gymnasium thing, right? This is like finding your own pop-up location-based experience.
Where's that?
You need to have the physical space.
I don't have a gymnasium.
No, you maybe check out the mall where the Void used to be, right? They auctioned off all that stuff. R.I.P. the Void. But the environments look super cool. Like there are columns. There's like real not just there's like interesting geometry. It's not just flat walls. And you got shields. You're shooting like lots of stuff. It's it's the Space Pirate Trainer experience with drones flying around and everything. So I'd love to be able to find a space to do that. So,
me too.
Yeah, maybe if someone knows of a space in San Francisco, 10 meter by 10 meter, ping us on social media on Twitter.
I wonder if the badminton place is open.
We'd like to reserve a court, but not play a couple courts, 2 courts side by side. Take down the poles, not play badminton, but for the next hour and a half, just wear some VR headsets. Yeah. There's got to be a place. Rec centers, the real rec rooms, physical rec rooms finally have a purpose. You don't have to go play rec room in your headset. Go to a real rec room and play Space Pirate Trainer DX. Quest only. It's not going to be for PSVR or the Rift. They only get the classic version. And that is September 9th. And that does it for this week's episode. I'll be able to report on Shang-Chi next week. But yeah.
I just want to say to any listeners that are in the Louisiana area that have been affected by the storm, or in western regions, including Lake Tahoe, that are being affected by the fire, hope you stay safe. It is a challenging time out there.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to follow Jeremy Kishore, you can find them always on social media at Jerware and at Kishore Hari. You can find us at
Science
Tested.
Quiche.
At Science Quiche. Yeah. You should own the other one too, Kishore, and just read your.
Nah.
No,
I want to leave room for the other Kishore Haris coming up in the world.
Oh, wow.
They have things to say. I don't want to be like Will and like box out all the other Will Smiths. Have things to say.
Yeah, I think he's pretty happy that he has those accounts. Okay, we'll see everyone next week. I'll play some music in the edit, but good to see you both, and see you later.
Hi there, I didn't see you. Tested.
Pop culture news.
Wow, that was new. No, you called me audible there.
Tested.